The greatest hoax ever pulled is convincing people that everything's a hoax.
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the almost daily ZenCast.
Good morning, folks. It is a bright and delightfully freezingly cold Monday morning. No, I'm a liar. It's Tuesday, January 4th. Shout out to everybody who, like me, postponed the start of the new year until they thought it was Monday and then realized it was Tuesday, because that was real. That just happened. Welcome to the new version 2.22 of the show for as we start off the new year. I'm going to try to reconfigure this podcast show to keep it moving, keep it fresh, keep it alive. And so I say to you, friends, good morning, Trumptopia. And I repeat the little opening thinky thought. The greatest hoax ever hoaxed, ever pulled off, ever created, ever thought up and deployed. The greatest hoax ever is, was, has been, continues to be the hoax of convincing people that everything and anything and everything that they either do not understand, do not agree with, can't comprehend, don't want to know about, are already biased against, is a hoax, or in some form or fashion, materially invalid. Let's contemplate that, dear friends, and let's remember that as we attempt to deal with the current events of this crazy comic book, cartoon, political train wreck that continues to barrel past us in a seemingly never-ending clusterfuck of malarkey. Speaking of malarkey, and I love that word, not because Joe Biden likes that word. I mean, he can fuck off. I've liked that word long before he ever came to prominence and tried to make that his cool, snazzy presidential catchphrase. Speaking of malarkey, my New Year's Eve wish was a wish that humanity might transcend its own. I wrote our own, which I think is grammatically incorrect, although it reads enough. Humanity transcending our own malarkey. 2022. Now, I've heard many things about the number and the numerological significance of it, and as per usual, they're wide-ranging and generally uplifting. So take what you can or what you will from all of that. There is something delightful about being in the first real year when it dawns on you. It's like, it's the 20s. Like the roaring 20s that we grew up in the nostalgic afterglow and shadow of. But instead of awesome swing dancing revival and affordable fashion that's classy and sexy, instead of a renaissance of art and new thinking. We are here now in the midst of this new burgeoning decade, and the very peak of the New Year's ish adjacent period of the year itself, and the definitive feature of this moment in time is not some exciting, unifying, peaceful and healing, uplifting, exciting new frontier of nostalgia meets the future that we all sort of hoped for. We don't have Jetsons flying cars. We don't have a return to big live intimate music and dance as an entertainment thing. We're living this whole other reality. And it's been defined, for better or worse, whether you love it or like it or hate it or don't care, it has been defined by Trumpism, and the Trumptopian movement, for which I still think the mainstream is hoping, a bit foolishly, will just magically go away, and that I have warned quite persistently from day one, from day zero, the escalator, the golden escalator moment. I was like, oh, watch out, because this is bigger than Trump, and also he's got this group of relatively young, relatively dashing and good-looking, charismatic children, and he could definitely be pushing for a dynasty political family here. The year leading up to this moment, leading up to this anniversary that we're about to hit and awkwardly commemorate in two different ways, has truly brought us closer than I have ever thought in realistic terms that this country might get to literally, in some horrifying freak show way, tearing itself apart. And although much ado about something has been, something else has been going on throughout the entire year, and I have admittedly totally failed to do my duty as a podcaster to call out and bemoan the flaws, unforced errors, and downright what the fuckery of the Biden administration in its blue tyranny of dystopic optimism. I'll admit to that, right? I spent a lot more time on the air criticizing and calling out Donald Trump than I have Biden. That is not, dear friends and audience family, that is not, should not lead to the conclusion that I am in some way just a blind follower of Biden or the DNC. For as I've gone to great effort and great lengths, that has actually, I believe, lost me some otherwise awesome friendships, I officially reside within neither of those two parties. I am neither a Republican nor a Democrat. And as we kick off this new year, I thought I would make that really, really clear. So you'll forgive me if I bring it up a few times during these opening moments of the new year. I am and have been, both on this podcast, on social media, in real life, amongst friends and strangers, been openly critical of Donald Trump. Not because of some deep-seated hatred, as I have been so often quite automatically, quite reflexively, quite pre-programmedly been accused by all those who are willing, who have been willing to defend and or apologize for Donald Trump in those social media public discourse interactions. I don't hate anyone. I believe, and I rarely use that term for reasons you either already understand or will shortly as you catch up with the show. I believe that words and actions should be something that if you're going to run for office, if you're going to run for the highest office of the land, then you should be held to account. That's what the press is supposed to be for, right? And yes, all the argumentation and all the flaws, all the known problem issues and all the theorized problem issues about the media, I know, I'm aware. People come at me with, yeah, I get it. I have been paying attention, and I have been on the internet since before AOL existed. So, lots of the people coming at me with like some sort of troll explanation about how the world works. You know, y'all figured this out since, in the days since Facebook came to existence. Simmer down, slow your roll, and slow the automatic regurgitation of the memes your echo chamber has dumped on you. Throughout the entire Trumptopian episode, I have both on social media and on this podcast in various ways tried to express my concerns that are, I think, relevant and valid and have been since day one, since day zero, the escalator day, entirely based on the facts and realities of the historic trail of problematic issues that Donald Trump has lived through himself. His words, his actions, in public and in court. I was not alone. Plenty of others with good intention, especially in the early days, especially before he got the nomination, were trying very hard to warn that demographic of people that he was trying to capture that this dude was a bold, two-faced liar, a known con artist, a cheat, and a would-be comically, woefully, redonkulously unable to actually be, wise guy, mafioso type that believes only in loyalty to him and no one else. And as this meme that I this is one, rarely do I envy memes. And no, I don't base my knowledge on the memes. Only when the meme captures a truth I've already understood for myself, and then puts it in a way that I wish I had memeified, do I value it in that way? Like, wow, I admire it. But there's the Rick and Morty meme floating around. I just posted it on my Instagram, where Rick is sitting around with the dad. What's the dad's name? It's not Phil. You know who I'm talking about. Morty's dad. And I'm fairly certain this is Photoshop, but they've put on. He's got a makeup. He's got a MAGA hat on and his green shirt. It says Trump 2016. So this must be from either, I'm guessing 2016, or if I only just recently seen it, and I wish I'd made it the moment the MAGA hats and the t-shirts came out. And I quote, and this is written to be in the style of Rick, and Rick is a raging asshole that is also a brilliant troll. And so I personally may not have written it this harshly, but I can't find no lie. There's no lie in this. Quote, and he's sitting on the couch like they're trying to watch TV, and Jerry, there it is. Jerry's just said something, some MAGA thing, and Rick is just tearing it open for him right now. He's ripping the bandage off. Quote, "Stop giving that asshole your money, Jerry. If he really is a quote-unquote billionaire genius, then why would he need your money? I swear to fucking God, the snake oil salesman rodeo clown's only profitable business has been selling hats and asking for handouts." I'm not going to read the very terse insult at the end because I don't believe in taking the critique to that level, right? But I certainly would if it was like theater, or I would write that in some story of fiction. But we're dealing with the real world situation that we're in. It should be, in my humble opinion, at this point, really painfully obvious and clear that despite whatever wins, quote, he actually, quote unquote, won, and let's be honest, folks, a real hard clinical review of Trump's time in office is riddled with losses. Losses, not wins, losses. In fact, compared to the historic trend, he's no better than any other mediocre weirdo that sat in that office and tried to do that job. Biden, he's most certainly on track. And I say this impartially. I didn't vote for Biden, and I'm not trying to be a big Biden supporter. But toe-to-toe, living through it, watching the actual things, that's the one thing Biden's got going for him, is he's appointing and they're getting approved, in terms of the metrics that the metrics that of the real things that Trump accomplished. Biden is on track to blow him out of the water, right? And judges is a perfect metric. Like, there was still plenty of open, positions to be appointed, and Biden has now outpaced Trump in something that Trump, it was one of his few actual, real, meaningful, kind of frightening achievements that the right wing echo chamber of America takes much pride in. But it's gotten to a place where, like, their own duplicity is been on display, and by they I mean the leadership, right? The problem is that, well, hold on. That's a terrible transition because there's too many problems. There's so many problems, it's ridiculous. And I'm trying to stay on track for the new format, and that new format calls for a little bit of a mental refresh break with just a wee bit of robot dance music to purge the palate. Here's a little track entitled Emotive Frequency Jumpstart, a DJ Z organization. What's the word? It's not organization, because it's not orchestration either. You're just staring at me like, oh, you fucked it up. Just go. Okay, all right. Sorry, DJ Z's miffed with me because I ruined the intro. Emotive Frequency Jumpstart, a chilled trap groove pad audio entertainment track. For your entertainment, folks, chill out for a hot second, and then we'll return to the discourse. And the grift grinds on, my friends. The grift continues. And it's just shocking to me. And I posted how far back did I post this other meme about it? Like way back. This is from, I wish Instagram would have just a date stamp for when this was actually... I've got date stamps for comments, but I don't care about that. I want to know when this meme was put up. But I made the meme. I made this one. This is meme. Original meme. Remember when you said that you were going to prove the election was a fraud and overturn it all, but all you actually did was milk your base for more donations, which you pocketed, and no one seems to notice? That was awesome. And it's Donald Trump sitting next to the late, great Chris Farley. From that scene where he's like, remember back when you did it, and no one remembers what the fuck. But over the last year, the Trumptopian GOP base, because there's a certain hybrid, right? Like there are people who consider themselves Republicans. There are people who consider themselves, or ought to be considered, can be identified as Trumptopians. I don't think they use that word, but they consider themselves loyal to Trump, right? Republicans consider themselves loyal to whatever Republicans used to consider themselves loyal to before Trump came along, and they support Trump or supported him as the one-time presidential candidate, etc. And then there are, the overlap, and those who there are Republicans who could never have, right? The never Trumpers. But over the course of the year, the Trumptopian Republicans have expressed the following diverse and contradictory sentiments. And this is my wording, paraphrasing them. But they've literally ranged from Trump is God's chosen commander-in-chief and we are his army, or statements to that kind of effect, to insisting that those that were involved in January 6th insurrection are, quote, not insurrectionists, that they are, quote, peaceful patriots that were supposedly peacefully demonstrating, and they are being unfairly persecuted by a corrupt system, while also screaming at the top of their lungs from the rooftops that they were not Republicans, that everyone involved was a Democrat or a deep state thing, member, however you would conjugate that, a deep stater, or it was Antifa, or a BLM operatives, right? Like they were either Democratic, as in Democrat, deep state Antifa, or BLM operatives, dressing up and pretending to be Donald Trump fans and supporters, making it to make Trump look bad. They've also cheered themselves on and called themselves patriots, responding to the call to arms of their, divinely inspired leader, trying to save America from whatever they think they're saving it from. To the other extreme of it never happened, it's all a hoax, it's CGI. And mixed into all of that, the big lie about the election being stolen, the big lie, huge, crazy, ridiculous made up things about several different kinds of supposed fraud, and yet Trump's own investigative bodies could not find that. Trump's own lawsuits failed under Trump-chosen judges because, lo and behold, there was no evidence to support their claims. Trump's own investigative bodies, while he was still in office and his administration ran federal oversight stuff, and on top of that, since he left, these ridiculous, because let's not pretend that they were up and up and well thought out. I mean, cyber ninjas, really? These ridiculous, because all the other, what are they called? When they recount the recounts. I mean, there was recounts, there were official recounts, there were, all the different court cases, and then these really unofficial, shady AF. Even these were biased, openly biased people. The people behind cyber ninjas and the copycat recounts, or whatever they were calling them that went on, were openly, proudly biased people that wanted to prove that somehow, for reals, Donald Trump had won based on the ballots. And they could not. Somehow the base, the Trumptopian Republican base, refuses to see all of these incongruities. The election was stolen, but he's running for Speaker of the House in 2022. And he's also running for a president again in 2024. And the 1-6 committee is wild Trump delirium, governmental overreach, but the bazillion Benghazi investigations were all righteous and true. I don't belong to either party, folks. So as an independent observer, I see a lot of flaws on both sides, but I see an overwhelming issue. And that's that, unfortunately, to my mind, to my eyes, to my worldview, It is, and they hate hearing this because they believe in the things that they've been misled by, and in their mind they believe that makes the opposite side the one I should declare as the following. But it's the right end of the political spectrum. It's everyone in the GOP tent. And there's more than one thing going on under that dirty, dirty, dirty tent, let me tell you. It's clear, and I mean that figuratively, not literally, folks, but they're the ones, that whole spectrum of political ideology is and has been over the last 30 years, in real time, I've observed it, been dragged away to a place of political ideology that is ever increasingly detached from reality. Political ideology that is encroaching on a place of pure fantasy. From the way that Ronald Reagan spoke about the issues of their day, to the way that Donald Trump blatantly lies about himself, from everything, from his net worth to his literal height. And this is not a wild Trump derangement accusation. This is not trying to make him look bad. These are the facts about this guy. He lies about himself. He lies about his assets. He lies about his businesses. He lies about the fraud he's committed in the past. He lies about darn near everything. And of course, listen, the knee-jerk response when someone's preferred politician is accused of lying is to say, well, all politicians lie. Yeah, duh. I've posted that meme. Here's where my concern is. Because Trump continues to successfully retain a shrinking minority of people are walking away, and I've called it out since the early days that I've seen real evidence of it. Do I have logbooks and charts? No, of course not. I'm just a dude that used to have a shitty job and then is, trying to become this online content creator because I don't even have that shitty job anymore. I couldn't afford to, unlike a lot of people on the internet, I don't bullshitly pretend to have done research I haven't done. But I am reporting to you my real life observations. Observations are things I've observed in the real world, in the way we share media with each other, right? I don't pretend that it's research, but it should also not be dismissed as totally irrelevant anecdote. The ways in which the ideological echo chambers, plural, because there's multiple, it's a multiple echo chamber, psyop, pincer maneuver of radicalizing extreme conflict by bombarding everyone on all sides of every possible, imaginable, engineerable wedge issue. And tragically, whoever's in charge of all the extreme ideas on the right, they are the ones straying further from the verifiable reality as far as I can tell. They're also the most complicit with the baser, less admirable set of motivations and intentions, and like I remember this. I remember the moment Trump said something about how government is the problem and it's all messed up. and then, quote, I alone can fix it. The right spends a lot of time accusing the left of tyranny. But from my independent perch of, I don't belong to either of you gangs, the right is the one that acts the most tyrannical and has done since long before Trump came around. The problem is Trump figured out and brought his brand of snake oil salesman charm and sort of early 60s, late 70s macho chauvinist sex appeal. And, that wink, wink, wench, nudge, nudge, nudge. I'm not a racist, but I'm not going to arrest all the racists or stop the racists from being racist kind of racism, to the mix, to the agenda. And, I mean, the party, since he took it over, no longer has bothered to put together a platform. They have no recognizable platform in the traditional sense of the parties are supposed to have platforms, and the different planks of the platforms are the places from which we derive policy, and those are the things that we debate. That's the Democratic Republic model that's supposed to be happening here. And in terms of it straying and failing to do what it is, to the best of my understanding, designed to do, it's the right making the most noise, accusing the left of being the most corrupt, whilst acting at least as corruptly as they accuse the left of being. The left does essentially the same thing in its own scale. There's plenty of issues with the left that I'm not a fan of. But I ask you to pause and think on this for a hot moment. The left didn't, let's step. I even loathe to talk about things in terms of left and right. But from my perspective, setting aside the exaggerations, the hyperbolic crazy, and the outright lies, both parties have a tendency to function in similar, if totally differently scaled ways. And it's problematic. They are to a certain degree, in my opinion, complicit with each other. They argue and they fight and they pretend to be at each other's throats, and yet the Democrats always get away with what they want to some degree or another, and the Republicans always get what they want to some degree or another. I've always considered the president a bit like a peacock in terms of the office, not the individual. I'm not mocking any individual that has occupied the office. I mean that the way the republic works and the way it has evolved in modern times, he's the spokesperson, the poster boy. He or she is the beautiful hero at on the specialist float in the parade. And that's their primary function. In its most healthy and functional fashion, they therefore then bring to the public an understanding of the party's agenda, in theory, building the support for what gets voted on and what gets passed and all the different ways and mechanisms that this democratic republic approves and enacts things. What Trump has done is just upset that entire apple cart, right? And now it's just wheels on a plank. Like the apples are gone, everything that made it look like a cart is gone. It's just wheels on a plank, and it's his skateboard, and he's gonna skateboard around, trashing everything. That was a terrible attempt at building a brand new analogy right on the spot. I don't pretend to know why he's doing things. He could have a million reasons for doing what he's done, right? But I do assert that he's done enough in the intervening years since he got elected that he should face consequences. The base doesn't even see that, right? Because any attempt to present them with verifiable facts about Trump's inappropriate, quote, bad behavior in office is dismissed with the greatest of ease, just dismissed out of hand without even bothering to think about it, because in their minds collectively they have accepted the manipulative claim, because it is manipulative. There's some truthiness to it, right? But it's also demonstrably false that only the left-wing media is corrupt. So the Fox News, the Newsmax, the Breitbarts, and all the others, small, medium, and large in between, the local news channels that are leaning right because of whoever owns them, they aren't as evil or at all, right? They're not out to destroy Donald Trump. But every claim that comes out of the news that I've been told to hate is a lie, a hoax, a completely made up thing. So facts just can't penetrate that kind of ideological barrier, right? It's the greatest hoax ever invented, to convince a group of people that anything and everything that they cannot stomach, don't want to agree to, don't want to confront, don't want to try to understand, or have been told to hate, to disapprove of, to disagree with, to reject, to not think about, all of it is a hoax and a lie. And we clearly have seen, despite the wildly incoherent array of denials and contra denials and pretzel making rationalizations about 1/6, we've seen that a contingent of the spectrum of people who blindly adore Donald Trump are very easily prodded into taking violent action. And 1/6, of course, is the tip of the iceberg, right? It isn't. It's the culmination of the entire course of events since he rode down that golden escalator and declared he was running for office. How does this... so we're literally days from the anniversary of 1/6. And both the Democrats and the Republicans, the leadership, right? The politicians in D.C. are planning memorial events commemorating 1/6. And you might be asking yourself, okay, Mr. Zeppo, you've rambled about Trump and you've explained that you don't hate him, but that your concern is what again? That although it's a shrinking minority, Trump is retaining a percentage of this demographic, right? He's retaining it on a give him, Donald Trump, personal loyalty and fealty, like he was the fucking king. And he has kind of jokingly called himself the king, said he wants to be the king. Who wouldn't want to be a king? Ha 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 ha. Jokes, wink wink, nudge nudge. Personal loyalty and fealty to me. He's been all over the place in the past year, and occasionally seeming to, when the courts have rejected his arguments and rejected his supposed evidence in the many, many cases that he has lost since January 6th. Because he's lost plenty. I mean, go do some real research. Go directly to court documentation. And there's some interesting, he's lost some interesting cases, and he's been, some interesting things have been brought to light. But the base doesn't care. At least a certain percentage of them. And won't care, because if he suffers consequences, if he, bless it, we all been praying for this since the day he won. If he gets arrested, like actually indicted and taken to jail for, one of the many potential crimes that he has legal exposure towards potentially being indicted for, especially, what's that one? I always forget it when I'm on the air. The emoluments clause, the international emoluments clause, like, hello, any of the legal prohibitions of, regarding, business transactions and properties owned through which payments can be made directly to the sitting president of the United States of America. I'm amazed he has not been brought on charges yet, because he overtly flaunted that he was just doing that with various properties. And it's been exposed, like these aren't made up hysterical claims. He literally used the federal government to pay for rooms, for room and board of, secret agents and his traveling entourage, sometimes not even staying there. The amount of things that he coulda, shoulda, woulda already been brought some charges for it's a cornucopia of things. And of course, the bizarre way in which the blue tyranny, the entire empire of blue tyranny, has trudged along, making statements and rattling sabers, and yet managed somehow to not bring any criminal indictments yet. What does that remind you of? Lock her up. Lock her up. Day one, she's going to get locked up. And then 4 years of people talking and arguing and debating online about whether it was going to be next quarter. No. These things take time. Hillary Clinton never got arrested. Wah, wah, wah. Guess what, folks? I dread, despite the realities, the painful, obvious realities, that Trump may very well run out all the clocks with delays. And he's literally, it's so sad and obvious, his tactics over the last few months. Clearly and obviously making every possible play to waste time until the midterms. Your question may be, what good does it do, Mr. Zeppo, to complain and bitch and moan or point fingers? You're right. I'm airing my concerns, which I hope is a nuanced distinction between just bitching and moaning. And I'm building towards a radical idea. For those who may not know, hello and welcome to the show if you're new. I am, by my own choosing, I self-identify as an amateur, very, very sort of not professional in any way, shape, or form, unorthodox mystic. Without boring you with details, here's where because there's a lot we can get into. There's a nexus, I believe, right? That's why it's in the intro page to the show. There's a nexus worth exploring between the radical intersection of technology, pop culture, politics, society, and spirituality. There's been a lot of back and forth, right? And there are folks out there that feel themselves entrenched in these divisions between themselves and people they know on the other side. And the dividing line is the border between Trumptopia and what was, up until recently, commonly referred to as USA, the United States of America. And they are two ideological places. They are two ideological nations. And the intersection of all of that with spirituality is, I will be the first to admit, is something that sounds silly to a lot of people. But at the core of my worldview, for lack of a better term, at the center of my belief system, and I don't like that term, right? Because I got a beef with belief. But put a pin in that and listen to the episodes entitled Belief and any of the ones where I do sidebars about belief. At the core of my belief system is what? I've just dropped it. Is the axiom, the mystery that belief is deeper, more complicated, more profound, more multidimensional. Belief itself, right? If all caps life is a thing separate from the word life, then all caps belief is a phenomena or thing or entity or energy or whatever, tool perhaps, metaphysical malarkey, you might want to say. But it's bigger and more complex than we give it credit for. And that it manifests, or at least attempts to. Yes, there's all kinds of caveats, like I can't just believe and wish for and make manifest a pile of money on my table. That's never going to happen. Not literally, not with a money being teleported out of nowhere kind of way. But belief harnesses the mind, and belief can be harnessed. Belief gives power to ideological constructs. And ideological constructs invested with a lot of belief take on their own abstract ideological reality. Therefore, I am of the humble opinion that we must choose what we believe in very selectively, very carefully, very wisely. And the problem is, as I was about to launch into before the musical break, the problem is when you have a boiling hot echo chamber of incongruent belief that is also all pointed in a similar direction and being used to harness people's power of belief, you can create chaos in the world. And I'm that Yahoo that's been saying on one platform or another, in some shape, form, or fashion or another, both in real life to people's faces and on, this gloriously ever-changing thing we call the internet or the interwebs or the cyberspace or whichever term you like to use the best. I'm the nut job that's been saying they profiteer on chaos. They profiteer on conflict. They profiteer on violence. And it doesn't matter which side you're on of any of the various engineered ideological wedge issues that foment and stir up and cause political conflict and political violence, ideological conflict and ideological violence. Right? It doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter which side you've chosen. Because those chosen sides, neither one of them are so virtuous and true that they will ever solve the problem. Instead of perpetuating the treadmills of distraction, instead of provoking each other, and here's my concern as we approach the anniversary of 1/6. Right? It's up to all of us collectively to use our sometimes neglected tools of self-awareness, of introspection, of meditation, of critical thinking, and also of not thinking, right? Not in a be an idiot kind of way, but be Zen kind of way. And that's a whole that's a whole nother episode of trying to explain, but we have to bring our full faculties to the job, the task of discernment, of discerning what is and is not political manipulation and malarkey, because it's everywhere. And yes, it's obvious that the right wing of the spectrum of political ideologies is getting pulled or pushed, as I said back when Donald Trump first announced, further and further and further to the right, and that because of association, by association, is dragging everything in the ideological spectrum of this national identity to the right. And that the right is willingly, apparently, willingly pulling it further and further away from observable reality. We must, as observers, as participants in this nation-state community of communities, as voters or non-voters, as members of this party or that party or no party, we must come together in the transcendent act of like liberating ourselves and helping each other to liberate ourselves, each other's selves, from all of the political ideology, so that we can rectify its extremity, its propensity to polarize and create conflict. We need to address that and figure out a way to heal the human species, right? Because it's not just an America problem; it's a species-wide issue. And this is the radical intersection of technology, pop culture, politics, society, and spirituality. I'm not talking about organized religion, right? Like, it's creepy and weird and ineffective, and not actually meaningful that the Trump base, especially those who remain, who cling ever tighter, ever more blindly, believe that somehow Donald Trump and his family are divinely inspired or divinely chosen, and therefore worthy of intensely toxic personal loyalty, which in and of itself, like, that should have, when he said "I alone can fix it," and he meant like the whole of the country, the entirety of America and everything it is, that should have been enough to be like, oh, what? No, that's not how it could ever get fixed. Because, I mean, that's ego. That's top-down dictatorship tyranny talk. For one individual alone to fix all the problems and thereby inherently, as part of the process, require and demand private, direct, personal loyalty and fealty to him? Like, how did that not trigger all the alarm bells? Because that is literally what patriotism isn't, right? That's the opposite of what patriotism is meant to be, is supposed to be. The American dream isn't to find one special orange spray tanned guy and worship him and make a golden calf statue of him and install him as a spiritual leader. That is not the American dream. At least not the way I understood it. And yeah, it's all a big hustle. It's all a big production. It's all the whole. You can get so cynical about things that you believe you yourself are a hoax, or that you yourself are the only real person, and every person else is a hoax. But there's a really problematic issue with that, right? I've said before on the show, and I'm sure I will be saying it again. If we behave as villainously as the villains, what have we become? And what defines villainy? The dehumanization of a chosen select few others or everyone else because they are, insert here whatever fucking rationalization is used to objectify them. That's the big problem I see. Right? Both parties, independent of whichever one is slightly saner and slightly closer to reality and slightly closer to telling their base the truth. Both parties, if I were a Martian that just showed up, like some sort of traveler from beyond, and I just showed up and said, oh, let me take a quick survey of what's going on in this country before I'd be like, wow. Both parties are willingly participating in an ideological tug of war that is unnecessary. Wholly unnecessary, and just gets in the way of actually getting things done. And they use the same tools to vilify each other. The left, the base on the left is bombarded. Let's just put it this way. Everyone is, and the closer and more tightly affiliated to either party or either ideological tent pole, they get more of it, right? But everyone is bombarded with content that contains psychological encouragement to vilify the other side. Yes, it's easy to say, but my side doesn't do nearly half as much wrong as their side. But yeah, both sides are doing that. The defense of both sides has always been, but my side doesn't do nearly as much crazy bullshit as their side does. And right now, this is the shitstorm we're facing in 2022 for the midterm. And believe it or not, and I realize I could be wrong, put a pin in that. I've talked about that declaration quite a few times, and it needs to be remembered. I realize I could be wrong. I don't pretend to be absolutely right about anything. And that matters. Because the moment someone starts offering you a solution and they start talking in absolute righteousness, you should be suspicious. The moment Trump said, I can fix it all, and I alone can do it by myself, disqualifying narcissism and egoism and bullshit, because that's bullshit. None of the things we are going to have to fix can be fixed by one person's brute willpower alone, or by one person capturing the ideological fandom of a majority of the country. All of the problems that we face as a nation state, as a species on this planet, we are going to have to fix through collective and transcendent action. In my humble opinion. I could be wrong. But we do, like, you can't just drop everything and, transition from what it means to be in the prior state into the projected state that I'm talking about, right? It's got to develop and build up towards that. And we start at the individual place. Right now, we live in a political milieu where I, despite my other disagreements with the blue party, I must concede that their point about the red party being a little bit batshit crazy, off the rails, like dangerously, tinkering with and experimenting with nonsensical attempts at grasping power for the sake of getting power that are literally dangerous to the stability of the overall system that we're stuck with until we either heal it from within or build a completely different system, right? At the most benign place, that's a problematic issue. And And at the simplest level, it forces me to have to agree with and support the promotion of some kind of blue wave in terms of this midterm election. If we look at the political stakes without the hyperbole and the alarmism, it's a little freaky that what the two parties are doing and pretending or actually maybe really actually fighting about. But if we as a collective, and here I'm referring to those of us who cannot bring ourselves to agree with the red team, then we have to stand with the blue team, even if we're separate from, right? That's where I'm at. That's where I'm coming from for those who may or may not have known. I don't support blindly the blue team because they've got their issues too, and I'm suspicious of just how complicit they are with the red team. But for right now, the red team is like off the rails and needs to be stopped because there's no way we can get anywhere else to gain meaningful traction to make the broader, deeper structural changes that are obvious to most of us and need to be made, right? Like infrastructure needs to be addressed. The inequalities that are built into our various systems, like, the justice system, etc., and the economic system, need to be addressed. Just saying that, right? I'm going to be accused of being a bunch of things I'm not. And the right is that far beyond the pale. Now, as I've long held to account, the problem with Blue Team is that they welcome too many. I mean, they overact and overthink and overdo the accommodation of diversity of thought, right? Like Joe Manchin is getting away with stalling out the Biden agenda because that's the Democratic Party in a nutshell. They're so willing to, and I'm criticizing in as much as that what the way in which this matters is that they then therefore never get as much done as they can, could, shoulda, woulda, promised, right? And that disappoints the base, so they don't turn out as strong in the interim or until the right has gotten a little bit of power play and they freak everybody the fuck out. This is that moment, folks, where 2022, we're getting into this midterm election cycle. Everyone's burnt the fuck out. More and more people don't want to vote. And that's fine. I respect that. I don't vote, but that's because the system has categorized me as a toaster oven and I do not have the right to vote. But that's neither here nor there, right? I still have the right to address and discuss my concerns with what is going on in the election cycle. Because, for all the reasons that I do. We can put a pin in that and talk about that at length if you all like. So all of that is to say, folks, that as we move forward, you will forgive me that I will be promoting and advocating people of whatever original flavor to vote and push Team Blue. But that doesn't mean I think that's the end goal, right? And that's the problem. This two-party system is supposed to be one of checks and balances and like civil discourse, civil political discourse and negotiation. And it has become a Squid Game deathmatch tug of war, which is toxic AF and does not achieve the functioning of the purpose of what government is, and it does not meet the needs of the people, and it gives those who would be radicalized in a let's just blow everything up kind of way, because, when the government sucks, people who can't, the fringy people get a little fucking crazy. And like I've pointed out before, there's a catch-22 that is bigger and broader and deeper and more problematic than the party politics gives us room to discuss. And having said that, I'm going to leave it at that cliffhanger because I've gone way longer than I originally intended to. But I hope you were challenged and or intrigued and or interested in all that discourse. Friends, here's the call to action for this episode, right? Like, this is still Trumptopia. Even though I do not believe that Donald Trump is secretly in charge somehow, I do not believe that he is or should be the current president. I respect and accept that Joe Biden is, and rightfully so, right? There's still problematic issues. There's still corruption in governance. Right now, the 4-alarm shitstorm fucking dumpster fire of corruption is most definitely way over there on the extreme right, which I think is starting to slip away from Donald Trump. I think I posted sometime last week or the week before the question on social media, is Trump not Trumptopian enough for Trumptopia anymore? Because it seems like people are stealing pages from his playbook and moving on without him in a way that should really, truly motivate the coalition of eligible voters that want to put an end to Trumpism. Right? Because if they take the midterms, if the GOP takes the midterms, then the odds that Trump will run again, because that's all he's doing. He's not going to be reinstated, right? That's what was supposed to happen on 1/6 last year. And then later in January, and then in March, and then in April. It never happened because that's not how any of this works. And he's full of bullshit. And he always has been, as is evidenced throughout the previous decades. If you just look at the non-debunkable facts about him as a person, as a businessman, quote unquote. 1212, magical number. Friends and folks, not only do we need to do that, and there's already that's in that wheelhouse on the left, right? They're already debating, can we out-organize this corruption? Can we out-organize gerrymandering? Can we out-organize the invasion by alt-right Trump fanatics into what is supposed to be the bipartisan, non-biased, impartial election officials, system, the official election system at a state by state, county by county level. I don't know, dear Team Left, but as someone that would rather root for you, especially in the short term, than Team Red, especially whilst Trump and the Trump family is still capable of bypassing criminal consequences, I'm going to strongly encourage you to think not just about organizing for the midterm elections, but also to return to becoming vocal about the simple reality and the set of realities for why the Trump family is truly not worthy of that kind of loyalty. And why giving an individual or a particular family that level of blind faith loyalty is categorically not what America is about. We need to step up to that plate. And they, as I said in some episode recently, I don't remember how long ago, that base, those people, we must remember. We must remember and prevent ourselves, the entire coalition of everyone, past Republicans, Democrats, non-party people like myself, that are opposed to what the Republican Party is doing to its base and how Donald Trump is capitalizing on what the Republican Party does to its base, and how the Trump family is attempting to establish a Trump dynasty, a political dynasty. We must remember that these people, those supporters, they are human beings no different than ourselves. They've just been led down a maze of manipulation for so long that they're clinging to things even in the face of reality, right? Even in the face of demonstrable truths and demonstrable falsehoods about this idol that they've become attached to. And we must prevent those same flaws and problematic issues from encroaching on our own coalition over here, because the work isn't done when we finally see a blue wave that prevents Trump loyalists from installing themselves in key critical positions. The work isn't done when we defeat at the federal level the red wave to make the congressional houses, the congressional chambers a right majority again. The work isn't done when we either somehow convince the GOP to not allow Trump to run, or he finally faces criminal indictment and he's no longer capable of running, or we beat him at the ballot box if he does run. The work's not done yet, even at that level. It's a long haul to address the ways in which, like some sort of extremely messed up analogy of Charlie Brown and what's her name? What's the little girl's character in that Charlie Brown cartoon that always pulls the football out from under Charlie Brown as he's coming in for the kick? They've been doing that for 50 years, 60 years. And they take turns doing it to each other, and it's skewed everything. Okay, I've rambled on long enough. Let's close this episode out with a bit of digital robot dance music. Urgent Uprisings Rally, a UK bassline remix live audio entertainment track crafted with animatronic diligence by DJ Z. As always, folks, thanks for tuning in. I will see you again soon. Be sure to visit solo.to and check out all the other content creation projects and support this and the other shows so we can reach a broader audience. Namaste. Peace out. Good Morning Trumptopia is a special segment of the Almost Daily ZenCast, a production of SeaTag Studios, a totally imaginary production studio that exists entirely in the mind of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. All statements, analyses, opinions, claims, theoretical or otherwise, are entirely that of the creative mind behind the fictional character known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.